it's me, MC of Healthy by George. Today, I want to talk about the hearing loss issue as we get older. But before we begin, I really want you to think about subscribing. I'd love to see you here every Friday and Sunday, or whenever you want to come, is really the truth. Subscribing really helps me and helps my channel continue to grow. And please share. I would love to share and have a like. It would be lovely. Or comments too, because hearing loss as we get older is a big issue. So, hearing loss, this is something that I think all of us have to kind of face as we get older. And it's unclear as to why it's such a common problem. I think sometimes it's just because we lose these higher frequencies in the hearing that we have because there are changes in our inner ear. Sometimes it's about our auditory nerve. That's also a problem, or some of the other components to our auditory system, which is really quite complex if you want to know the truth. So, as we've lived our life, we have a certain amount of noise that we are exposed to. And this kind of cumulative noise and exposure to loud noises over the years can cause damage to our hearing. So, it's environmental noise, loud music, or any kind of occupational exposure. Like, I can't even imagine the problem that people would have if they're working in construction, the sound of things going out there. I know sometimes in New York, when I'm walking in the street and they're doing construction, it's rough. Or just the constant noise that's outside on the street in New York can be rough. So the other issue is our health conditions. Certain health conditions, such as diabetes or high blood pressure, or anything that is cardiovascular, can damage the nerves to our hearing. Those are all things that can influence our hearing. There also can be chronic medications can cause a problem with that. And that's why it's very important to talk to your doctor about your medicines. And so you understand that there are some medications that are harmful to our auditory system. Genetic factors. So this is something in my family. We have a history of my family having severe hearing loss on my mother's side. And now my mother is struggling with her hearing and some of my family members. And it is challenging, but there are solutions and we have to take them as we go along, which is a little difficult, I think, for many of us because we feel like it's making us look old if I'm wearing a hearing aid. But who cares? You want to hear, right? The other issue is that there can be physical changes due to our aging, and I'm suffering from that with our ear structures because there's a thickening of the eardrum or those hair cells that are part of the what they call cochlea. That is something is what happens is really a problem. So what is that thing that I have? Well, I have to tell you, I woke up one morning and my eyes were spinning literally in my head. And I didn't realize that I was having this benign paroxysmal positional vertigo. And this is where this is a very common vestibular problem as you get older. It causes brief episodes because of how your head is turning of dizziness or vertigo. And this really occurs with head positioning. And why does it happen? Well, these calcium crystals that are called octoconia, they become dislodged and then they're not in their normal location in the inner ear. And so it kind of needs to be adjusted because it disrupts our sense of where we are in space. You know, there is this whole process in our inner ear that helps us understand the feeling of being upright. And when you have a symptom, like they call this for short benign proximal BPPV, I think is what it's called by shorthand. And you feel a sensation of spinning and vertigo, and it's often triggered again by head movements. And tilting your head back is when I have most of the feelings, or looking up quickly, or rolling over in my bed. And that's when I first had it. Sometimes it comes with a lot of nausea. Getting a diagnosis is very important. So as soon as I had it, I went to the neurologist and they can show you how to fix it. It's a really easy fix where you learn something called the Dix-Hallpike maneuver. It's where you kind of lay on your side, then turn your head, and then sit up really fast. You can look it up in YouTube, and it shows you lots of ways to do this. And it helps get those crystals that have gotten out of place into the right location. And that way you can definitely feel better. Now, there are some treatments because the maneuver, there's that one that I just said, the Dix-Hallpike maneuver or the Epley maneuver. They help. There's also a little medication that you can get too to help with this, but it's generally very benign. It is not indicative of anything serious, and it just is a little scary, frankly, to be all of a sudden losing your sense of where you are in space. The other issue is to think about, why is it important to get a hearing test? As you get older, there's this gradual decline in our ability to hear. And a lot of times, other people will observe it before you'll notice it. It's so important to get a hearing test because you lose frequencies according to your age. And that's very important because some frequencies, like just that high frequencies, sometimes hurt because you can't hear women's voices or children's voices, or some consonants that are much higher pitched sometimes can feel difficult to hear and understand. So it can make conversations challenging. Background noise. I know sometimes in a very noisy restaurant, or there's a lot of background noise, I can't really hear the conversation that's happening. So background noise can be harder to distinguish the sounds of those people that you're having conversations with versus the environment. So sometimes making social interactions can be difficult when we start to lose our hearing. Speech clarity is also one of the problems that happens, that sometimes we can't quite hear what this thread of conversation is because in a group we have competing sounds and pitches that are going on. And so it can be overwhelming if you're having challenges with frequency and it's diminished. Sometimes it's about balance too. This issue of having balance gets to be more and more important as we get older. And the vestibular is what they call it, the vestibular processing is really what helps us keep ourselves upright. And so hearing and the components of our hearing are very important for us to know where we are in space. There's also just the physical changes that go on in the inner ear. It's the thickening, it's the things, we have to know how to help ourselves. And so going and having, once you kind of hit a certain age, I went just recently because I know that hearing loss is something that's genetic in my family. I went and had my hearing tested just so I could be reassured that I still have pretty good hearing and that it's not declining right now. Now, will I get it tested again in maybe 2 or 3 years? Yes. Or will I get it tested again if I suddenly notice something that is happening with my hearing that seems to be more present? So, if you are having trouble of any kind, feeling a sense of imbalance, a lack of distinguishing certain sounds or language, or getting lost in a conversation when you're in a crowded room or a social setting, don't wait. Get to that hearing specialist and get a hearing test. It is so important because there are so many mechanisms out there that you can start to take advantage of so that you can continue to be a hearing person. Because the truth is that if we start to lose some of our issues with our hearing, it also impacts our brain functioning. So we want to make sure that we still can stay socially connected, mentally connected, physically connected, and the hearing and our auditory system plays a big role in that. So be well, my friends. Don't take your hearing for granted and get it checked. Even if you don't feel like you have any trouble, it's good to know a baseline of where your hearing stands as you get older. please think about subscribing. I'd love to see you here every Friday and Sunday. And join me in conversations of how we can keep ourselves healthy, functional, well into our much older years. Remember, we have this one precious life. Let's live it intentionally. Bye bye. So, thank you so much for joining me at Healthy by George. I hope you found the information inspiring and that it encourages you on your wellness journey. Because remember, your body, your well being are a most precious gift, and every tiny action taken daily can make a huge difference. I hope the information here is educational purposes and is not meant to replace your medical care. See your doctor and talk about what works for you. If you enjoyed today's content, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Your support means the world to me, and it helps me continuing creating content that inspires and empowers you to live your best life. Goodbye for now, and join me again at the next Healthy by George.